It's time for another edition of Special Edition, brought to you by AT&T. Bill Jones, along with Nate Newton, Bucky Brooks, and Isaiah Standback. It is football time at the Star in Frisco. Jerry Jones had his State of the Team address back on Wednesday. Of course, Stephen Jones was there along with Mike McCarthy. Dak Prescott even held his press conference the first day the media was able to talk to everybody, and hit the practice field on Friday. And Nate, it's a great time of the year, isn't it?
Oh, it's a great time of the year. Whenever I see the State of the Union and Mr. Jones and the coaches and his son up there talking, I'm very much excited. I'm excited that Coach McCarthy's excited and he gets a chance to put his hands on his players.
Yeah, Nate, I concur. I believe this is a great time of year because we've heard so much about what Coach McCarthy wants to do with this team. Well, now we get a chance to see it in practice. I'm excited about what the Cowboys could be this season.
Man, fellas, it's 2020 and the boys are ready to go, man. I can't wait to see these guys step onto the field. We obviously know Coach McCarthy, his first year, and he has a slew of talent to play with. So let's look forward to see what these guys are going to do this year.
And speaking of that slew of talent, what do the Cowboys do on Wednesday night? They go out and get a big-time pass rusher as they sign Everson Griffin, the former Viking four-time Pro Bowler, had 8 sacks last year for the Vikings. He's averaged 10 sacks a season over the last 6 years. Let's go around the horn with each of you, Nate. And how excited are you, and how excited should the Cowboys be that they have sort of filled that void left by the Robert Quinn departure?
You know, for the first time, I think we went out and got a hardcore player. It's not about Alden Smith, Randy Gregory, Tyrone Crawford coming off injury, this guy, that guy. We went out and got a playmaker, a guy that shows up big in big games.
You know, Nate, you talk about him showing up big in big games. I'm going to say this. He's an upgrade over what Robert Quinn was, and I think that's saying a lot. Everson Griffin is a guy who has 74.5 sacks in his career, and even though people will look at the stat sheet last year and say he had 8 sacks, he had 24 quarterback hits, and he has a full toolbox of moves. From the spin move, turning speed into power, the hesitation fakes, he is a problem off the edge, and it gives Mike Nolan a chance to run a true 4-3 defense, which is what the Cowboys have talked about being able to do.
Yeah, but Mike Nolan is a kid in a candy factory right now by getting this gentleman right here. This man is 6'4", 280 pounds, as you attested to, has sacks galore over the last 6 years. Only man that has more sacks than him over the last 6 years is Aaron Donald. You got a versatile player who's aggressive, who's a leader in the locker room, who's highly acclaimed by his teammates, and this is going to change up exactly what the Cowboys are going to do. This is what they needed, this is what they got, and I cannot wait to watch it.
You talk about Mike Nolan. Jim Tomsula, the new defensive line coach, has to be the happiest guy in the room. Also, Nate, I remember those Super Bowl teams of the 90s, and there were about 8 or 9 defensive linemen that were rushing about every other play, and the Cowboys have put that kind of a defensive line together as far as guys who have done something in this league now.
The rotation would be great, man, with Evan Griffin and DeMarcus Lawrence, Tyrone Crawford, Alden Smith. It'll be just a great rotation to have there, man. And I know they're going to be excited.
Look, they should be excited because what this does, I think it puts Alden Smith and Randy Gregory back in their natural roles as designated pass rushers. If Mike Nolan wants to use some hybrid stuff, now Alden Smith and Randy Gregory can do that while Everson Griffin can be his every down defensive end.
Yeah, fellas, and just to your point, man, this guy, it gives us the ability to be able to be versatile as we want to be. We can move Griffin on the inside, put Alden Smith and everybody else on the outside. It's going to be a scramble. It's going to be awesome. Mike Nolan's going to have some fun.
All right, we're going to have some fun over the course of the next half hour here on Special Edition. When we come back, Stephen Jones joins the show.
Special Edition, presented by AT&T, is brought to you by Ford. Visit your local Ford dealer. Ford is the best in Texas. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Salvation Army. Doing the most good. And by AT&T. This segment is brought to you by the Texas Lottery. Play the new Sevens scratch tickets from the Texas Lottery. With top prizes up to $977,000. There's a Sevens scratch ticket for everyone. So play today.
Cowboys Special Edition brought to you by AT&T continues now. Time for our nationwide conversation with Stephen Jones. Kyle Yeoman's doing the honors this week.
Thank you so much, Bill. Kyle Yeoman's here, joined by Stephen Jones, Chief Operating Officer of the Dallas Cowboys, and of course the Director of Player Personnel. And there's so many different changes around not only the NFL, but our world at the moment, just the times that we live in. I mean, we're 6 feet apart. We've got the plexiglass in the middle. Thank goodness for that. But at least it's time to talk football again, and that's really the greatest thing. But with training camp quickly approaching here in the next couple of days, what are some of the biggest changes that you're going to see from this Cowboys, whether it's practice or just roster moves whenever you go into training camp with no preseason?
Well, I think you mentioned it. With no preseason games, it certainly creates, some challenges in terms of evaluating young players. It's always great to, see rookies, to see guys who haven't had much time in a game-like situation get into that. And, a lot of times that's when players really stick out in terms of what they can do on the field when the lights come on. But at the same time, for a first-year coach like Coach McCarthy, with a first-year coach with his new team, obviously Mike's coached for quite some time and won a lot of games, including Super Bowls, and got in the conference championship games. But it gives him more continuity, more practice time with his team. As you know, you treat a preseason game just like you do a regular season game. You travel the day before, you're off the day after. I mean, it really cuts up the week. This is going to allow Coach McCarthy to really just have, continual practice time with this particular team. And certainly as we get our hands around the rookies, that are going to be able to help right away, they'll benefit from that practice time that they may have missed from getting to play in the preseason games. So, that's probably going to be the biggest challenge, and yet the biggest opportunity for this Dallas Cowboy football team is missing the evaluation of preseason games and seeing these young guys in game-like situations versus the plus that it brings in terms of allowing us to work with these guys on a continual basis, week in, week out, without having the big breaks.
You have Jason Witten leaving, you have Byron Jones leaving, but do you still kind of look back at this offseason as a success because of what the expectations are moving into 2020?
Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, we did lose some key players. Of course, anytime you lose a legend like Jason Witten, who goes down as one of my all-time favorite, if not my most favorite Cowboy, that's tough to overcome. His leadership, what he brings to the table, not to mention his skill on the field. But I think at the same time, we were able to prepare this football team in free agency in a way that we didn't necessarily have any glaring needs going into the draft. And then we were able, which we like to do, is pick the best players available. And certainly we weren't necessarily slated for a receiver with that first pick, but when CeeDee Lamb's sitting there, a player that we had very high up on our board, then it gives you that opportunity to make that pick, and which ultimately leads to a great draft. So, even though we lost some players, I feel like we're a better football team in the off season as we head into the season right here than we were when the season ended. So, and then you talk about the addition of Coach McCarthy and what he brings to the table. He's got skins on the wall, as Bill Parcells used to say. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's been to several championship games. He's coached winning football up there with the Packers for years and years. And, we think he's going to make a huge difference here for the Dallas Cowboys. So it's an exciting time for us. As we mentioned, it's going to be a little bit different, but we embrace that and we look forward to moving forward.
Well, and you've got a championship coaching staff, like you just mentioned, with Mike McCarthy, Mike Nolan, and you bring back Kellen Moore. But in the current environment heading into training camp, how is evaluating some of these players that are new additions, either they're rookies or signees that you haven't necessarily seen on the field before, yet you have limited action in order to make those evaluations?
Well, it'll be challenging in terms of not having the time on the job that we've had in the past with these young people. I've seen numerous young people mentioned who were long shots to make their squads. Rookie free agents that made it said how difficult it would have been without a full camp. But at the same time, we're going to have 16 practice squad guys this year to compensate for the challenging times. And I think with between our coaching staff, Will McClay and his scouting staff, and what we know about these young guys, that we'll pick the right guys to keep around. And hopefully, these are guys that are going to develop into great football players. You always look forward to finding those college free agents like a Miles Austin or a Tony Romo that go on to make a huge difference for your football team. And we hope one of those may be sitting in our college free agent class.
Well, we're just about 4 weeks from the opening kickoff to the NFL season, September 13th on the road at SoFi Stadium against the Los Angeles Rams. Stephen Jones, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us, and we'll go right back over to you, Bill.
All right, thanks, Stephen and Kyle. And up next here on Special Edition, let's dive into this Cowboys offensive line. Will Joe Looney be your new starting center for your Dallas Cowboys?
This segment was brought to you by the Texas Lottery. Play the new Sevens scratch tickets from the Texas Lottery. With top prizes up to $977,000. There's a Sevens scratch ticket for everyone. So play today. This segment is brought to you by Ford. Visit your local Ford dealer. Ford is the best in Texas.
Welcome back to Special Edition, brought to you by AT&T. Let's break down one of the position groups for the Cowboys that will get a lot of consternation the next couple of weeks in training camp. That's the offensive line. And Nate, how about we start with you on that offensive line, and in particular at the center position, as Mike McCarthy said on Wednesday that Joe Looney is getting the first team snaps at center. But, of course, they drafted the rookie out of Wisconsin, the Remington Award winner, Tyler Biadasz, as well.
I think with the way this pandemic pans out, you'll see Looney for most of the year, if not all of the year. I think he's the guy. I mean, for Biadasz to come in and just take that job with limited practice work, limited pad work, I don't see that happening. I think the big play is going to be at your left guard with Williams and McGovern.
Yeah, it's funny because, Nate, you talk about the limited opportunities that Biadasz has had to get onto the field. I think this is a team that is in now. You have to go with the veteran. Looney has been on the field. He's a guy who has a number of starts under his belt. And when it comes to dealing with protections and the exotic fronts that the Cowboys will see, you can trust him to know how to get everyone lined up. Because of that, I think he has to be the odds-on favorite to be the starter.
I totally agree. I think when you have a head coach like McCarthy who's coming in without the offseason that he typically wanted to have, I think having that foundation, right, of consistency, somebody that you can rely on, a veteran like Looney at the center calling the shots, I think that is who you want at the helm right now. But maybe later on during the season, when Biadasz catches up a little bit on the system and gets his feet underneath him, I think that you might want to move Looney over to left guard and let Biadasz be the one that's really controlling things at the point.
Of course, center a big
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
You don't? What do you say there, Nate?
Looney is a center, and that's where he plays best at. That McGovern's got to either pick it up and push Connor Williams, and then let's see what Connor Williams can he come off his injury and fight off Connor McGovern. But I think Looney is your center for the rest of the year. I'm sorry about that.
You know more than me in that.
Looney started every game 2 years ago when Travis Frederick had the Guillain-Barré syndrome. That's a huge hole to fill. But let me ask you, Bucky, at left guard, you got Connor Williams, who has started in this league but coming off an ACL. Connor McGovern in his second year, who's a third-round draft pick. It might be a pretty good battle there.
It will be a pretty good battle. With Williams coming off the injury, you just want to see how quickly can he get back up to snuff. Obviously, they have some invested in him. They thought he was good enough to be a starter because he's been a starter throughout his time. But he has to be a guy that can no longer be the weak link on this offensive line. This offensive line looks like it should be a top 5 offensive line, but he is the missing link. He has to up his play, and McGovern has to also push him.
I think Nate Newton would love this whole show to be about the offensive line, but we don't have time for that, Nate. And when we come back here on Special Edition, how about we take a look at one of the backup quarterbacks you maybe have never heard of before?
This segment was brought to you by Ford. Visit your local Ford dealer. Ford is the best in Texas. This segment is brought to you by AT&T.
AT&T's Cowboys Special Edition continues now. Auto Nation brings you our player profile. Kyle Yeomans on a backup quarterback who probably wishes there were some preseason games this year.
Thanks so much, Bill. And moving forward for Ben DiNucci, after he was originally in the conversation to be the backup quarterback, it's more likely he's going to be the third-string quarterback after the addition of Andy Dalton this offseason. However, moving forward, he still has a chance to be that number 2 quarterback here in Dallas with the swagger and the arm talent that he's shown during his career.
Cowboys Nation, this is Ben DiNucci checking in. Can't tell you how excited I am to be part of the team. I'm ready to get to work. We them boys.
There has to be a certain swagger, a charisma, an overall confidence to play quarterback in the NFL. Ben DiNucci, Cowboys 7th-round draft pick, has it. A confidence level that's high enough that you would never know that he played his collegiate football at the FCS level. Instead, you see a fire that is normally seen at the sport's highest level. Born in Atlanta, DiNucci ultimately ended up at Pine Richard High School in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, where he became the starting quarterback as a sophomore and threw for over 7,600 yards and 72 touchdowns in his high school career. His first collegiate stint came with the University of Pittsburgh, where he was the backup and eventual replacement for Nathan Peterman before electing to transfer to James Madison as a junior. By the time DiNucci was finished with the Dukes, he was in JMU's top 5 for career completions, passing yards, and touchdowns despite playing just 2 seasons. But it's not just his arm that leads the way for the rookie, but his ability to carry the football and make a defender miss each help him translate to the modern NFL offense.
We were scared to wait on you as a free agency. We just drafted you.
Drafted with the 231st overall pick by Mike McCarthy, someone who he had previously met in an elevator in Frisco, and a coach who kept 3 quarterbacks on his rosters in Green Bay, DiNucci will now fight for that QB3 slot, something he is more than excited about.
Crazy how far we've come from the hotel and the Cowboys down there for the championship, huh? Yeah, I'm ready to get to work.
Still time left here on Cowboys Special Edition. Up next, what is the biggest question mark facing the Cowboys headed into this training camp?
This segment was brought to you by AT&T. Special Edition, presented by AT&T, was brought to you by Ford. Visit your local Ford dealer. Ford is the best in Texas. Miller Lite, the only beer of the Dallas Cowboys. AT&T. And by NFL Game Pass. You'll never miss a game again. Enjoy full access to coaches' film and game replays from Week 1 to the Super Bowl. Subscribe at DallasCowboys.com/Game Pass.
Welcome back to Cowboys Special Edition, brought to you by AT&T. Let's go around the horn with one question here in our final minute. The biggest question mark for the Cowboys coming into this training camp. Let's start with you, Bucky.
Can the defense generate enough turnovers? Mike Nolan has talked about it since his initial press conference. Taking away the ball is the priority. It's the number one deciding factor in who wins or loses games. Can the Dallas Cowboys produce more turnovers on defense? That's the biggest question that I have for them this season.
And some of the guys are going to be playing a part in making the ball go on the other side of the ball is the defensive backs. Are the defensive backs going to step up to the plate? Who we know there's a lot of guys in there that are going to be competing, but exactly what cream rise to the top?
Tell you what, fellas, it's going to come down to the offensive line. But all those weapons, Dak coming back trying to prove himself, if that offensive line is more than solid, this team will flourish.
I just knew Nate would say the offensive line. It's the key to the season, isn't it, Nate? Every year the offensive line is the key to the season, right? All right, we are happy that we'll be along throughout the season and throughout this training camp to bring you everything that's happening at the Star in Frisco as football is back, and we will see you again next week here on Special Edition.